The Galactic Council called it a Class S necrosis event. To the rest of the universe, the star known as Kalos 9 was a funeral pyre in the making. It was a blue supergiant on the verge of supernova that would sanitize 3 solar systems. Every advanced species, the crystalline Thrax, the hyperlogical Vora, had already packed their migration ships and fled. To them, a dying star was a cosmoborder wall. You don't argue with physics. You just run. Then there were the humans. Commander Jax Cullinan stood on the bridge of the Icarus Link, staring at the sensor feeds. Most people saw a death sentence. Cully saw a massive, untapped battery. Beside him, Chief Engineer Sarah Miller was buried in a holographic web of thermal equations. They weren't retreating. They were moving closer. "Cully, the Council's High Arbiter is hailing us again," Sarah said, wiping grease from her forehead. Her voice was steady, but the slight tremor in her hands gave her away. They had been working 30-hour shifts for weeks. "He says if we don't evacuate within the hour, they're marking the sector as lost and disabling the jump gates. We'll be trapped in the blast zone." Cully grabbed the comms. "Put him through." The screen flickered, revealing the Arbiter, a creature that looked like a translucent jellyfish in a pressurized suit. "Commander Cullinan," the alien warbled, "your biological stubbornness has reached the level of insanity. You cannot harness a supernova. It is like trying to catch a falling moon in a butterfly net. Leave now, or perish with your primitive ambitions." Cully leaned in, a smirk playing on his lips. "Arbiter, back on Earth, we used to chase tornadoes just to see what was inside. You see a catastrophe. We see a power bill we don't want to pay for the next 1,000 years. Keep the gates open. We're just getting started." He cut the feed. "Sarah, how's the butterfly net looking?" "Dyson shell segments are at 60% deployment," she replied, her eyes flashing with a mix of terror and excitement. "But the gravitational shear is tearing the anchors apart. Cully, if the containment field dips even a fraction of a percent when that core collapses, we don't just die. Our atoms get smeared across the quadrant." "I like those odds," Cully whispered. He walked over to her station, placing a hand on her shoulder. It was a brief, quiet moment of human connection amidst the hum of hyper-advanced machinery. They had been together since the academy, a pilot and an engineer, a pair of fools who believed they could outrun the end of the world. "If we pull this off, Sarah, I'm taking you to that real grass park on Mars. No more synthetic oxygen, just us and the wind." She looked up at him, her eyes softening. "You better keep that promise, Jax, because I'm not dying in a tin can." The ship groaned. The star Kalos 9 was no longer blue. It was a violent, pulsating violet. The standard galactic gravity, alarms began to wail, a sound that usually meant the end of all things. "Core collapse in T-5 minutes, the ship's AI announced." Its voice was calm, a stark contrast to the chaos outside. Across the galaxy, millions watched the long-range feeds. The Council had already begun the morning rituals for the human madmen. No one believed it was possible. How could a species that only discovered FTL travel 2 centuries ago master the death of a sun? "Anchor the Dyson needles," Cully shouted over the roar of the structural stabilizers. The Icarus Link dived toward the sun's corona. Thousands of autonomous drones swarmed out like metallic bees, weaving a web of exotic matter filaments around the star. They weren't building a solid shell. They were building a cage for the light. "The Thrax are laughing at us, aren't they?" Sarah yelled, her fingers flying across the controls. "Let 'em laugh," Cully said, gripping the flight sticks. "They've spent 1,000,000 years evolving to survive the universe. They forgot how to change it." Suddenly, the star went silent. A literal silence in the vacuum, a localized gravitational hush. The core had collapsed. For a heartbeat, the sun shrank to a fraction of its size. Brace! Then the rebound. The supernova exploded outward with enough energy to vaporize a nebula. But instead of an unrestrained blast, the explosion hit the human net. The exotic matter filaments glowed a blinding, impossible gold. The Dyson needles acted as lightning rods, siphoning the raw, violent energy of the dying star and funneling it into a series of massive capacitors the size of small moons. The ship bucked like a wild animal. Metal screamed. "The heat shields are at 98% capacity." Sarah screamed. "The anchors are snapping." Cully didn't look at the gauges. He looked at Sarah. "Hold it together, Sarah. Give me everything you've got. Humanity doesn't blink." In a moment of pure desperation, Sarah bypassed the safety limiters with a manual override, her hands burning against the overloaded console. She redirected the ship's own life support energy into the containment field. For 10 seconds, they sat in total darkness, the only light coming from the roaring star outside and the sparks flying from their instruments. Then, the pressure vanished. The sensors stabilized. Kalos 9 was gone. In its place stood a shimmering, golden lattice, a dead star contained, its fury trapped within a human-made battery. The largest power source in the history of the known universe. The comms channel exploded with noise. It wasn't just the Arbiter. It was thousands of voices from hundreds of worlds. Shock. Silence. Then, a roar of disbelief. The Arbiter's face reappeared on the screen. He looked stunned, his tentacles limp. Oh, you didn't just survive. You harnessed it. That energy, it could power a galactic civilization for an eon. Cully wiped a streak of blood from his nose and looked at Sarah. She was breathing hard, a triumphant grin breaking through her exhaustion. Arbiter, Cully said, leaning back in his chair. We call it the Humanity Bank. And since we're the ones holding the card, I think it's time we discuss some new terms for the Galactic Council. He turned to Sarah and winked. Mars is looking pretty good right now, isn't it? She laughed, leaning her head against his. Better than a supernova, Jax. Much better. The galaxy would never underestimate the primitive humans again. They didn't just live in the universe. They rewrote its rules.